Okay, thank you for joining us. We'll have a bit of a different session this time with Johan coming first. For questions, we will use the Q&A on Zoom. And it probably will have a bit more of a virtual socializing afterwards. So if you have questions for the speakers, you can add them in the Q&A. We won't have the voting as on Slido, but I think this is easier for everyone to interact and not have to leave the Zoom experience to go vote somewhere else. And our first speaker tonight is, you're already seeing him and his slides. It's Johan Jensen, he's CPO at Grover. And he'll have a topic that's almost as interesting as the coronavirus right now, which I think everyone is starting to be a bit fatigued of, and also the reason why we're doing all of this remotely. Cool, so whenever you want to start, Johan, can go over to you.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Shamala. So I do have at least one reference to COVID-19 in my presentation, so I'll try to keep it interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about sustainability and circularity. So we call it Loop because at Grover we actually have an internal kind of piece of our infrastructure which we call Loop, and for us we think it's kind of fitting for this concept of sustainability or circularity. So I'll give a little bit of insight into what it looks like to build product at Grover in this kind of circular model. So just to start with definitions. So the most common definition for sustainability, this is the one that the UN uses most often, is to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And then the definition that we'll use for circularity is kind of, I guess, three objectives of circularity. So one is designing waste design out the waste and pollution in the system, keep products and materials in use, so that kind of recirculation or recycling, and to regenerate natural systems. So when we talk about circularity, those are the concepts that we're trying to keep in mind. So for those of you that don't know what Grover does, we're based here in Berlin, and we started out about almost 5 years ago in Berlin. We're a tech subscription service delivering a circular retail and finance experience. So the distinction there is that typical retail is kind of this linear model. You buy things, or manufacturers make things, you buy them from the retailers, and then you throw them away. And typical finance is works in a similar way. And so what we're doing is we're kind of like merging those two worlds. And it's not so common in Europe, but it does exist quite a bit in Asia, where you have these kind of retailers that also are financial institutions. With Grover, we do it slightly differently in the sense that we recirculate these assets. And so what we're doing is we're essentially renting or leasing consumer tech products. And when you're done with the product, it goes back to us, and then we recirculate it to the next person. And I'll explain a little bit more about how that works. So we have about 2,000 products that we rent on Grover.com across 10 different categories, really focused on consumer tech products. So this is from a campaign that we ran last year. It's called the Mieze campaign. So for those of you that don't speak German, Mieze means rent it, but it also means cats. So it's kind of this play on words that we're running. And one of the scenes in the video was this guy who, and we were comparing it to bondage with your bank. So typically when you take out a financing contract, you're kind of committed to the length of that financing and you can't really get out of it. And so what Grover's trying to do is kind of change that commitment and add flexibility. But also we're trying to redefine consumption because we don't believe that the current model is sustainable. And so by including this circular element where these electronic products actually come back into refurbishment and then go on to the next person. And then at end of life, we either sell them or recycle them, which is kind of the goal in the future. We're trying to kind of add circularity to typically very wasteful industry. So there's other reasons why this model is working, and we're seeing kind of rapid growth over the last few years. One is that a lot of consumer tech products are getting really expensive. We're seeing that consumers want the flexibility to be able to try these products and to swap them when they don't need them, or to upgrade to a newer version. So if there's a new iPhone coming out every year and you don't necessarily want to keep it after 12 months, you just send it back to Grover, and then you can upgrade or change to whichever model you want. And then the other reason where we're seeing kind of this rapid growth is no one else is really kind of in this space. Typical kind of financial institutions offer loans and things like that, but they don't get into kind of this type of a circular model with assets. And then retailers also aren't really doing that. So they're offering you the option to buy something or to finance it, but they're not offering you the option to rent it. So what we're seeing is that in Germany, there are about 150 million devices that are sitting in people's homes kind of unused. And so this is another problem that we're trying to solve. So 1 in 3 people in Germany actually have 3 to 5 unused tech devices at home. This is from a study that we did together with the think tank here in Germany. And this is like the financial kind of model behind it. So it's based on kind of just economic principles. And the idea is basically that the useful life of one of these assets it outlives typically it's not the same as the life of the actual device. So think of your, not just smartphones, but projectors or any of these consumer electronics devices. Typically they sit unused. And so the idea here is that you want to be in kind of high utilization at all times. And so that blue band is essentially where we want, or the best place for the consumer to be. And that's what we're supporting with this model. Whereas with financing, you have reduced utility over time. So one of the main goals is to maximize the useful life of the asset. So what we see is that every category is slightly different. Some have shorter term use cases, and so then they get recirculated more often. So things like smartphones and tablets will get recirculated 3 times, whereas cameras will get recirculated on average 7 times. So it really depends on the category you're looking at. So, and then the second thing that we're really trying to support is this idea of durability. And the right to repair. Making sure that planned obsolescence is not part of the actual product development from manufacturers, but also that on the consumer side, if something goes wrong, that they're actually able to repair the device. They don't necessarily have to throw it in the garbage and buy another one. So some of the numbers, kind of the achievements so far. Last year we circulated 95,000 devices. And we have 100 million in assets that are being recirculated at the moment, and 500,000 registered users in Germany, Austria, and Netherlands. We just recently launched Austria and Netherlands, but we've been live in Germany for a number of years now. And so the model is, as I was explaining, is kind of the circular economy model where you use it, return it, gets refurbished, and then it goes into, depending on the condition of the asset, but we will re-rent it if it's as good as new. Otherwise we refurbish it, or we'll recycle, or in some cases donate. So just quickly about myself. So I'm from Saskatchewan, if no one knows where it is. It's in Canada. It's very cold. We invented winter and snow. It's like -40 in winter. I started out as a webmaster when I was 12 years old. So kind of product, I guess back then you were called webmasters, but now you're called product people, or at least in digital. So I then worked for the UN Environment Agency for quite a while. So I worked on biodiversity conservation and climate change topics mainly. And then on kind of conflict resolution in post-conflict countries, mainly also around like conservation. So sustainability is like a topic that's really close to my heart. And I'm pretty happy to be at Grover, where it's really intrinsic to how we do product. So that's our CFO on the right, who's a very serious guy, and Semi, one of our UX researchers. And this is early when I started with Grover, about 2 years ago. Our early product team it was a really small group of scruffy, mostly male product people. It's changed since then, yeah. So it's been an intense couple years. But what so merging kind of what I know about environmental issues and conservation and sustainability, and then what I've learned over the years in product, I've come to the conclusion that I think like product-focused companies that put product at the center or the customer at the center can better adapt to the values that are changing around sustainability. And I'll get into why I think that's the case. I don't know if you've ever seen this episode of it's a South Park episode about Walmart. Normally I would ask everyone in the audience if they've seen it, but I guess it's difficult to gauge. So I won't go into too much on this, but basically what they're saying is that what's the problem with Walmart? Why does Walmart keep showing up in these communities and destroying local businesses? It can't be good for society. And so the conclusion at the end of the show is that they find that there is a mirror inside every Walmart. And when you look in the mirror and then you realize that the reason that Walmart is destroying all of these local businesses is because they're just delivering what consumers want. And so it's just a reflection of consumer preference. And I think that's very much the way that I like to look at sustainability. I think it's not something that you can shove down people's throat. I don't think it's something that you can necessarily push on people, but if the demand is there, I think there's a balance to be had between. So that's why with Grover, like we really don't push the sustainability aspect too much because it's kind of built into the product. And if we have a good product that people want and that's economically viable, then we're going to see growth. But we try not to use it kind of as the lever of or to generate demand itself. So the way we look at kind of product development, and especially from a sustainability angle, this is the typical kind of balance that you want to achieve. So we have building the right thing, building it right, building it fast, and then having that adaptability to change so that as circumstances change, you can, and you know, these are kind of fundamental principles also of agile development as well. This is your typical kind of funnel in product development or product management. So you've got your inputs, your outputs, and your outcomes. So where does sustainability fit in here? And I think it can fit anywhere along the funnel. So starting out with kind of your company mission. So you know, in Grover's case, like we have this intrinsic you know, value for circularity. It's part of kind of the business model itself. You know, durability, repairability, asset condition directly impacts our net promoter score and our profitability. So at the top of the funnel, for the inputs that you know that define how we do product development, it's kind of embedded. Also, then you have, you know, customer demand for sustainability. So, and that's been changing over time. So now there seems to be a lot more interest, obviously, from consumers to be using sustainable products because of the value that they feel that provides to them in their life. And then I think as part of the organization's like objectives, or if you're doing kind of like OKRs, for example, you can include those in the objectives. So do you want to have, and we'll get into this ESG score in a minute, but this environmental social governance score that you can define and measure. Do you want to make that part of your OKRs? And then, of course, on the output side, you're working in sprints. You're trying to deliver, you know, customer value. One of the topics that's coming up with us is like, should we include a CO2 offset option in the checkout? A few retailers we've seen are doing that. I think it'd be nice to reduce our footprint, and so it's one of those things that, you know, you can plan into your sprints, and then ultimately you're trying to like measure success. So what are the results here? So, you know, look at what you're trying to achieve and see if you manage to do that. I remember when I worked at the UN, it was like this common joke that like everyone wanted like your success stories, right? So because they always want these like nice stories to spin to the stakeholders, which in this case are kind of like ministries of environment from around the world. So you would do these little pilot projects for conservation or whatever it might be, and if it worked, then the idea was that they would like scale globally and they would do those pilot projects all over the world. It never really happened that way. What it would be was like this little pilot project. You would make up as much as possible like these like amazing success stories, and then it usually would just end up in some report somewhere, which is very typical of the UN. So there's two types of products. I think there's products that are aiming to be more sustainable, So in the case of like a product that's aiming to be more sustainable, I would think of like an airline that's offering you like CO2 emission offsets, or hotels that are putting those signs so that you don't use too many towels, I guess. And then there's companies that where sustainability is intrinsic to the product. And so I'm thinking of there's a company in Sweden called Karma that does that's working on food waste and from restaurants and commercial. I mean, I think Grover kind of sits in this category because it's a circular business model. IKEA that's committing to, I think by like 2030 to being carbon neutral and changing towards this circular business model as well. So I classify them kind of in those two categories. And then the question is like, why does it matter? Like, who cares about sustainability and circularity? Well, for one, the World Economic Forum says so. So they seem to know what they're talking about. They say that 9% of the world economy is circular, which I guess means 91% is linear. So it's a big opportunity. In fact, I think they even like quantified it. They said there's a $4.5 trillion opportunity in moving to a circular economy. Other reasons, so sorry, there's a lot of text here, I apologize. So half of the global institutional assets are managed by what are called principles for responsible investment funds. And then half of those are managed by what could be called kind of sustainable investment funds that are based on this ESG governance principle. And what they found actually, and this is defined by empirical research, that sustainability in practice actually reduces volatility and threats from external factors. So think of all of the things that could potentially hurt your business. That's part of sustainability. So think oil spills, a cancer class action lawsuit, COVID-19, now perhaps like working from home becomes like part of a sustainable strategy. And then there's a great study I encourage you to read from Basson and Bush, where they looked at 2,000 empirical studies that were done on the topic, and they found that these environmental, social, governance companies, or companies that had been rated positively, were also having a positive impact. So the returns, the ROI from those companies was actually net positive if you compare it with funds that included like oil companies or otherwise. So it's more than just kind of, you're not paying a premium anymore for investing in sustainable companies. The other kind of impetus, the reason why this is important is that like the European Union, European Commission recently released the European Green Deal in December. And especially for our business model, it's very relevant, where they actually cited the right to repair and curb the built-in obsolescence of devices, in particular for electronics. It really means that like what we're trying to develop for our customers happens to also be in line with the Sustainable Development Goals globally, but also the European Green Deal, which derives from that. So, and they specifically cite models like Grover. So for us, that was a really nice, I guess, compliment in many ways to the business model that we were following. So then what are sustainability objectives? I think the best place to start is from the SDGs, from the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a global agreed kind of, if we're thinking in terms of OKRs, this is like the global OKRs. So it's a good place to start. And the way that they're set up, which I'll get into in a minute, makes a lot of sense and can be nicely integrated into your product management. So how do you measure success? There's a few standards or frameworks for that. The Global Reporting Initiative looks specifically at the Sustainable Development Goals, and they have kind of standards on how private sector companies can report. You also have, and this is more kind of on a publicly listed company basis. So if you're a large multinational, the Institutional Shareholder Services actually looks at these companies, and they've kind of automated their ESG score, their environmental social governance score for these companies. You've also got the Ellen MacArthur Foundation when you're speaking directly about circular economy initiatives. They've done a lot of great work with the World Economic Forum to define kind of what is circular. And with Grover, we're actually working with this academic, Chris Tuppen, who I think The Guardian voted as one of the top 50 people who's going to save the world, which is a pretty nice compliment, I guess. But he helps us kind of make sure that, like, in our reporting, we are in line with kind of how the consensus on what circular economy reporting looks like. Okay, then so then what are sustainable outcomes? As I was mentioning, you've got environmental, social, and governance to look at, and then within each of those clusters, you could look at under environmental, climate change topics, biodiversity, hazardous waste, and the list goes on. And then within those, you could define your specific metrics. There's social governance to focus on as well, and every company can potentially have a stronger impact here or there. And in the case of Grover, we try and target all three of them. I think we're really strong on environmental topics and potentially on governance topics, where we try to support government initiatives like the European Green Deal. And so once you've kind of defined those, then you can start looking at real metrics. And so we did our first sustainability reporting, I think in Q4 last year. We did a study to look at what is the impact of our business model. And so what we're seeing is we're able to optimize, the alternative would be to buy these products. And if you compare it with the alternative of purchasing, what we've seen is that we've reduced e-waste with our tech rentals by 360 metric tons, which is about 15 truckloads of devices, just based on kind of what we've been doing here in Germany. But of course, as we scale globally, this number I think will be quite representative of a big shift. So 15 truckloads worth of devices, which are very resource intensive to create. And then in terms of CO2 reductions, we've seen 4,275 metric tons reduced, which is equivalent of 900 cars being driven all year long. So on a global scale, of course, as we scale outside of Germany, that will also be a significant number. And then the other metric that we're tracking is the number of devices. For every device that people rent on Grover, these are the number of devices that are not being purchased. So 5.2 devices are not bought. We also asked customers how much demand are we actually creating for consumer electronics, and then we discounted that from the number of devices. So we said, would you have otherwise used this device if Grover did not exist? And then we discounted that from the total number of devices for this calculation. But if you want more detail about how we come to these, just get in touch. Okay, and then circularity also drives our infrastructure. So when I was saying that Loop is one of our flagship projects, what I mean by that is we have kind of two big areas. One is Hub, which is around operations and logistics, and then Loop, which is our subscription management system. And those circularity principles need to be embedded also in the software architecture. So Hub really takes care of all the asset sourcing, the inbound, the repairs, the tracking, the refurbishment, the selling and recycling, and the outbound. And then Loop, which is focused on the subscription management side of things, is looking at billing, payments, credit, spending, swapping, which is you have one device, you replace it with another device. And then this concept of extensions, which applies very flexible business logic around these subscriptions, which are essentially like contracts. So I guess it's almost like we've built this type of almost like Ethereum type setup for subscription management, where you can modify the core subscription or contract logic. So just to wrap up, I think it's important that sustainability is somehow built into the product management lifecycle. And like with tech debt, you need to pay it down over time. And I think everyone knows what happens if you don't pay down tech debt. I think sustainability is the same, but just for the global or for the whole world. So kind of include that into your existing kind of workflow. And then I think it's important to remember that sustainable products should impact, but also reflect customer preferences. So it's not, you need to also respond, kind of like that example of the South Park Walmart scenario where you're looking in the mirror. I think the products that we're building for consumers are also a bit of a reflection of customer preferences. So while we may be able to influence them, it also depends on value it's changing. And I think what we're seeing like globally is that it's not just like individual consumers that are changing their preferences, but it's everyone along the line, all the way up to the politicians that have made these decisions, you know, the regulators, the business owners. They're starting to like kind of redefine a little bit what sustainability means to them. And it may not be that you're actually paying a premium to build a sustainable product. In fact, it's probably even smart to do so. And something that like that we and Michael, our founder, talks a lot about is this idea that like people say they care about sustainability, environmental issues, but ultimately it has to make economic sense for them to change their behavior. So we have to be somewhat pragmatic around that as well. So that's it from my side.
So people who are on Zoom, you can click on the Q&A tabs and ask Johan questions. People who are on YouTube, you can comment there, and then I'll work some magic and share that. Well, this is always a bit faster when you are in the same room with people. We could also unmute the audience, but my experience with stand-up calls is if you have more than 5 people on a call, there's always someone's baby or someone's cat. Sometimes it's even our cat makes noise. So I thought that the written part is easier. No worries, we're ahead of schedule, so we can wait a bit. What's cool is I recognize some names from people who came to previous meetups. So Bobby, I think you were at the FinTech one as well. Annette, hi. Thanks for the little MVP plant that you gave me at that dinner. Bianca, how did the self-isolation work? You by the way, I know you guys are muted. You can also answer in the Q&A, and I'll just mark you as the answer as done. And there are some people which I don't know. Hi, cool. So we have one from Gregor. Thanks, Gregor, for being our first person with questions. Johan, would you like to read it? Because the YouTube people won't be able to see the question here.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the question says, wait, no, I'm not seeing, can you read it? Because I'm actually only seeing a comment.
Sure. Hi, thanks for the nice presentation. I would like to know how many devices can be re-rented with or without refurbishing, smiley face.
Really, it depends a lot on the category. So some categories require more refurbishment than others. So you can imagine gaming is lower refurbishment versus something like smartphones, where we have a higher refurbishment cost.
Okay, cool. So we've marked Gregor's question as answered. This one from Bobby. What are the most profitable devices for the company?
Well, there's quite a few. So, I mean, we have about 2,000 SKUs in circulation since we started 5 years ago. So it really, yeah, it varies a lot. It's also, yeah, everything. I mean, gaming is very profitable. Wearables are also very profitable. Smartphones. So it's, I mean, there's no one single device. It's quite spread out. But there is a bit of a kind of 80-20 principle when it comes to profitability. But yeah, I mean, gaming is a very profitable category, for example.
All right. Another question from Sylvie Saudan Borer. Hi, thank you for your presentation. What is the common mistake industries do when they are thinking about sustainability in their process or product production? How to avoid it?
So I think, I mean, so when I worked with the UN Environment Agency, we did a lot of private sector partnerships. And one of the companies we worked with a lot was Puma. And I think it's really important that like it becomes intrinsic to the company culture and like kind of embedded in the company mission somehow. There's companies like Patagonia, for example, that have embedded that really nicely. I think the biggest mistake that can be made is just to expect that somehow by running some kind of a campaign, a one-off project is going to change the the perspective of consumers towards your product. It's like, don't just run one project and then call yourselves green and then use it in all of your reporting. Try to somehow embed it as a sustainable part of your systems. I think that would be otherwise you also end up getting a PR backlash and ultimately you just look bad in front of customers. So try not to think of it as like a band-aid or a quick solution or PR stunt, but try to embed it somehow in the company culture or in the product management objectives.
Okay, cool. Marking that done. Another one from Davide Marquisio. How long do people keep their devices?
It really depends. What we've seen over the years, and this is also part of our product strategy, is to see how we can understand how to create these epic subscriptions. So we have this concept of a house party, and the idea is that we want you to join the Grover house party, and we don't really want you to go away. And typically, if you run out of alcohol at the house party, people will go home. So we have all sorts of ideas about how to make the party sustainable, or not sustainable, but just keep people interested and engaged. And so luckily over the last year, what we've seen is a really nice increase from about 6-month average rental periods to almost 10 months. And we've done that kind of by creating a little bit more of an engaging experience, but also targeting the categories where people will be happier with Grover. So we have this love maximization strategy that we've been implementing. And the idea there is to look at the people with the highest product market fit. So we ask all Grover users, how disappointed would you be if Grover no longer existed? And then based on their responses, we were able to identify that the longer term renters, and specifically the categories that are more long-term, lead to better, happier customers. And so the try before you buy or testing use cases, which are usually the thing that immediately comes to mind when people think about Grover, at least originally, are not the people that are happiest. It's the people that use Grover as a lifestyle choice that have the highest product market fit with Grover. So we managed to get people up to 10 months, and the goal now is actually to move towards more of a we have this like dematerialization strategy, so to move towards hardware in the cloud, where you would pay a flat fee for a certain number of devices for a monthly fee. So then it really becomes kind of like a Spotify, Netflix subscription service for all of your consumer tech needs.
Cool. And one from Annette. How could you share some example KPIs or OKRs for sustainability/sustainable products?
So in our case, some of the things that we're looking at the moment, and we're also pretty early in this journey. We only in Q4 started really doing an in-depth assessment on kind of what is the sustainability impact of Grover. But I think some of the things are CO2 reductions. That's one thing to look at. In our case, e-waste is a big problem because the inputs are very resource intense. So we look at tons of e-waste saved. And then in our case, we're also looking at how the durability of the products, because it has a direct correlation with the profitability of a certain SKU, a certain product. So for example, we don't typically invest in products that are very fragile and that will need to be replaced very quickly. We would and this also kind of leads into our own kind of sustainability strategy, because we would much rather be renting products that don't have planned obsolescence or that are not built in a flimsy way, because it supports our business model in the long term.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. So I just checked YouTube. There are no questions via YouTube. Does anyone want some more of Johan's time? Any other questions before we take on the next speaker.
Cool.
Okay, so thank you so much, Johan. And our next talk is from Shamala. Oh, I see that you got muted. You should be unmuted right now. Shamala is joining us from Volkswagen, and before you guys came onto the stream, she was telling us that they had a 70 people virtual stand-up, which is more than all of us here right now on this stream. As on YouTube, I think it's also under 20, so we're still smaller than your stand-up. We don't hear you, by the way. I see you're unmuted here. Maybe could you check your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, works
Okay.
perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so yeah, it worked perfectly well. I think like most of us were not having video and everybody self-muted themselves and they were unmuting when they were talking. So I was pretty surprised by the discipline that we had.
It's pretty cool. All right, so whenever you're ready, you can go to seeing your presentation. Cool, it works.
Cool. Should I start?
Of course.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much everyone for being here, and thank you Anil and Mirela for giving me this opportunity here today to talk about how we are developing software in the Digital Lab VW. A little bit about myself. I'm Shamala. I'm a software engineer working at Volkswagen Digital Lab Berlin for past 4.5 years. So today I just want to talk about the art of crafting sustainable products. I think Johan already talked a lot about like sustainability. So I would touch base upon sustainability from a different angle today. But before we jump into this, I just want to give a short introduction about Volkswagen Digital Lab. So in the year, I think 2015, this lab was opened here in Berlin because before it used to be like, Volkswagen is a big automotive company. The notion of having like software development is a little bit different because most of the software products were like outsourced. So which means that the knowledge base was going out of the company, and most of the time the product was developed by somebody else, and then it was thrown over this virtual wall, and the operation people had the responsibility to run this product, but having no knowledge about how the product was written, operating it is always a daunting task. And the company wanted to change this kind of thought process. So the lab started as an experiment 5 years back on how to change the way of how we develop software. And today I would like to take you on the journey that I have had so far in developing sustainable products. So first I want to just talk about the definition of sustainability, right? So this is slightly a different definition that I have taken here today. It is the ability to be maintained at certain rate or level. So a product is generally outliving the people who are like, part of building it. Like, you can start a product, you can move away to another product, but the product still stays. So how do we make sure that this product can be maintained by others who come after, right? So so what makes a product maintainable? So typically I would ask the audience like what makes a product maintainable, but here it's a little bit difficult. So in my opinion, normally what makes a product maintainable is probably like these 5 principles, right? These are communication, simplicity, feedback, respect, and courage. So these are actually extreme programming principles. So extreme programming is kind of like an agile product development methodology, which is focusing more on the quality of the software and also the ability of the product itself to adapt to changes very quickly. So it's really, really agile, right? So one of the things that I want to mention is that all of these, so normally when we think about like what makes software great or maintainable, what makes a product great, normally the answers that I typically get is like, yeah, we should have CI, CD, we should have Sonar Cube, we should have like metrics that tells what is the quality of the code and so on. So that's why I would like to stress that the core principle of or the core things that the product has to focus on are these principles, because principles do not change when the circumstances change. So we can use Sonar Cube today, we can use the different metrics tomorrow. These are all, I would say, practices, and practices normally correlate to one of these principles that, like for example, if you use some metrics for code quality or something, then probably that's the feedback that you are getting, right? So practices can change based on the circumstances, but the principles don't change, they remain constant. So this is what the extreme programming methodology focuses most on. So whenever we talk about like all of these principles, there needs to be someone who has to help us follow these principles, because at the end of the day we are all in the in this boat together for building like products, right? So in the lab we have these three main roles. We have the user experience designer, the software engineer, and the product manager. So if you have heard about the Simon Sinek's, so I was kind of like inspired by the Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, so where he talks about how the most successful leaders know the why of the product, right? So I was just always like trying to split these roles into like why these roles exist. So the user experience designer, their main role is to find out why this product needs to exist, what is the pain point that the user has, and do we even like need to, is this even something as a product that needs to be built, is also one of the questions we normally ask when we get some product ideas, right? So the user experience designers or the product designers are responsible for asking the questions why, and the product manager is basically responsible kind of like for the roadmap of the product, what needs to be built, how do we prioritize when things needs to be built, how do we have like our release cycles and so on. And the software engineers are responsible for how to get this done and how to present this to our customers, so we get feedback, so we can learn on this. So does this mean that these three roles are super like silos, that they don't work together? That's really not the case. So we work in balanced teams. So which means that we are focusing as a team, we are actually pretty well focusing on the user value and the business value, right? So this is what drives us to build great products. So one of the things that I would say is that a balanced team means that you have collective ownership, you have shared knowledge, and also you have transparent communication across all the roles. So basically this is why we have these three roles, which help us to follow the principles that I said before. So what helps us to follow these principles? So I want to talk about certain practices that we have followed in the life cycle of our product development on how we are able to build a sustainable product. So the week normally starts with an iterative planning meeting. So which means that we are focusing on 1 week. So we are basically prioritizing only for the week. So that's how much agile we are. And each of our user stories is sliced in such a way that they are delivering user value to the user. So every story that gets delivered is actually impacting the user in a way or the other. So in that sense, we are normally or we are very focused on the outcomes, and we are not focused on the output. So we don't focus normally on, okay, for this 1 week, how many stories have we developed, or what is the velocity of the team. Rather, we focus on what is the outcome, what is the goal, or what is the epic that we are going to deliver. For this meeting, even all the team sits together, the designer, the product manager, the engineers, everybody sits together, and we are discussing like how we are going to prioritize this week's work. The next thing is design reviews. So design reviews is one of the practice that we follow as a team. So typically sometimes when you have like these new features or something that you want to develop, we go out and ask our users for feedback. We have prototypes and everything, and even before doing that, the designers come up with certain prototype or design, and they present it to the whole team and get some feedback. Because I firmly believe that design also drive the maintainability of the code. So it really depends on how maintainable your product becomes. So the designers and the engineers have the needs to work together to understand what is good for the product. And it is also important for the design. It's also important for the devs to basically understand the why of the product. So why do we put certain things certain way, so that you can also have the answers to the questions that why our product is evolving in such a way. So the third thing that I want to talk about is pair programming. So when we start the development of a product, so basically just a minute. I think I have some disturbance, so maybe I will quickly just mute myself and be back in a minute. Can I mute myself?
Yeah. By the way, Johan, if you like, I will unmute you because I saw there's another question that came in. Just give me a bit because it usually has this very hard to unmute buttons. All right, so you are unmuted now, and there's another question from Cesar. Is Grover also planning expanding into furniture rental?
Yeah, okay. So I think I responded in the chat, but yeah, no, at the moment we're really focused on consumer tech products, and we really want to build the best tech experience because there's so many areas already to expand in tech. We are expanding into mobility, but really micro mobility mainly. So things like scooters, e-scooters, mopeds, e-bikes, but no plans for furniture.
Cool, thank you. And just a second. Sorry about that, I missed the answer in chat. Shamala, I'm unmuting you now. Wait a second. Usually it has a bit of lag. All right, so now it should work.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about the small lag. I'm so sorry. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, so basically I was talking about pair programming. So so I talked about how we prioritize and how we are sharing knowledge between the designers and the product manager and the engineers. And once engineers start to work, we typically do pair programming, which means two engineers sit together and they are working on the same code base, right? So what is the advantage of this is basically this allows us to break the knowledge silos. So everybody in the team gets knowledge, and one of the main constructs of pair programming is that the engineers are rotating every day within the team, which is responsible for building the product, which means there is a good notion of team morale and collective ownership of the code. So if there is something happening in the product, a bug or something, so normally the team is automatically coming together and taking ownership rather than trying to say whose responsibility was it, as everyone feels responsible for the whole product and the code base that the engineers are maintaining. And other big advantage that I have seen is also that we are able to not have like, you know, separate workflow for pull requests and code review, because every time a code is written, it's basically seen by two people, two engineers at the same time. So we don't also have a process of doing code reviews. But nevertheless, like I said, not every practice is working for everybody. So pair programming is something that you can follow when you have somebody new to the team who you want to onboard, or like if you have some technology where you are not very confident in, and you want to, like, you know, try out new things with somebody who knows this technology already. These are like some of the places where pair programming comes in really handy. And also pair programming helps you to really focus. So when you're pair programming, the urge to see a mobile phone or something is like really reduced, so you're able to basically, like, you know, concentrate more on the product and get work done. And then yeah, so that's basically it about pair programming. And the setup looks like this. So we have basically, like, you know, two monitors, two keyboards, two mouses, and everything. We sit next to each other and work. So we not only pair with engineers, but we are also pairing with product managers sometimes, and we are also pairing with designers also, in terms of like how you know, how yeah, basically cross role pairings is also one of the most interesting yeah, pairings that I've had. And then we also have test driven development. So we follow the test first approach. So when you do this, there is basically a lot of feedback that you get. So if you change something, you're free to refactor. So again, test driven development, we are able to do this because most of the products that we work on is also like greenfield products. But if you are like inheriting some legacy product and so on, I would still say, like, you know, writing tests after, or writing tests to understand what is the behavior of the current code, so that you have the confidence to do some refactor or changing it is very important. So it's test first or test after, doesn't matter, but having tests in so many layers is really important, because it gives you courage to change your code. It gives you courage to add feature, and you know, you can be very confident that when you're pushing the code, that everything is working as expected. So even if you have some new people joining your team, then for them also it is like really they can be like super confident when they are changing, because the code will give them feedback if the change is going to break something. The other thing that I want to talk about is continuous integration and delivery. So continuous integration is that how frequently you are merging your changes to master, and continuous delivery is how short release cycles that you have. So in the lab, the team that I worked for, which is basically an identity provider, and if you have used our vPark or vShare or vDeliver, all of these apps, you can see the login screen, and this is the federated authentication system, which is like very important for all of these applications to function. In this team, we are basically pushing a code, and every single commit is run through the whole pipeline, and they are deployed. So we use feature flags and so on to turn off and on like what we want and what we don't want. But at the end, like, we have so much layers of tests. We have security tests, we have load tests, we have regression tests, we have unit tests. So every single commit is basically directly going to the production, and that's the amount of confidence that we have in our code. Not to mention that we also get fast feedback from our customers. So when we have a big feature release or something, and we can already learn from how the users are liking this feature, and we quickly get feedback. So we have this build, measure, learn, and all of those things like nicely put together. So all of these practices, like Johan said in his talk, how do you adapt to change, how do you build the right thing, how do you build it right, all of those things are basically like, all these practices helps you to find out also, like, what you're building is the right thing, and that your user basically is happy. The next important thing that I want to talk about is that once your product is live, it is always very important to have it stable. So when a product is unstable, like, you have a lot of bugs or it's down all the time, there is no point basically in adding more features. So reliability is also a very, very important topic that one has to care about since the beginning of the product. So how we do it normally, every product that we develop, monitoring, logging, all of these things are basically a topic that is discussed from the beginning of the product itself. So it's not just added before going live, rather we are always thinking about, like, how can we add observability, how can we monitor, how do we fix errors, like what is the mean time to respond, what is our service level indicators, what is our service level objective, and so on. So service level agreements is typically what everybody is following, which is basically the penalty when you are not available or when you are crashing a lot, and so on. But in order to achieve that level, we have to put a lot of effort. So most of the times between the engineers and the operations, it's always like, okay, what do I concentrate more on? Do I develop just feature after feature, or should I concentrate on reliability? This is where we use the term error budgets. So error budget is basically something that's kind of like money that you have, and whenever you have a reliability problem, the budget goes down. So now you would know that, okay, so you don't have a budget and you need to get this budget, so which means you have to work on your reliability and not features. So this concept is kind of like helping us to prioritize how where we need to focus at the moment on a product that is up and running, right? So let's see, if we want a 99.99% availability in a software, which means you are only allowed to be down for 2 minutes in a week, 4 minutes monthly, and 53 minutes yearly. So if you want to achieve this level of availability, you have to put a lot of efforts in the product. You cannot simply just build a product and have like, okay, now I have 99.99% availability, because which means then you if you have a bug, you have to fix it within 4 minutes in that month. So if you don't manage that, then probably you're going to be not reliable, and you have violated your SLAs basically. So reliability is a product feature. So this is what we are very much focusing on, our site reliability practices as well. Because the idea of having reliability should also be coming early into the product, and that we are working together with the devs and operations. So we do DevOps. So the team which is responsible for building the product is also responsible for running it. So which means we have to work closely with the SRE team. So that we have like a good understanding, and we concentrate on reliability from the beginning of the product itself. And finally, the week ends normally with retrospectives, or like whatever you do, software is not bug free. There are always bugs, there are always downtimes. So we focus more on blameless postmortems. Again, the whole team is part of that. It's very simple. So we are just having a timeline in terms of postmortems to see like what went well, like what happened and who responded, what was the fixes done. And the most important thing at these meetings is basically to be very, very transparent. So once we have the idea of what has been broken and how we can fix it, and how we are planning to avoid this in future, and what is the course of action, we then publish everything to all the stakeholders in a very, very transparent way, and we keep them apprised of all the changes and action items that we have, in order to, like, not prevent it from happening in the future, and also to show in a transparent way that this is what we are going to do. So at the end, we always have to remember, at any given stage, we have to be humble and we have to be kind to each other. So what I wanted to say is that we call ourselves a lab, but we are not a research lab. So we have 6 live products from Berlin with 200 plus polyglot microservices, and we have 99.9% availability. So in one of the products that I have been part of, which has almost like right now, I would say like 800,000 active users. In this product, we had actually like one major incident in 4.5 years. So by following all these practices and being transparent and have constant communication, and having a great team morale, is actually helping us to build a product that is basically really sustainable for a long term. So I just wanted to show you this picture. This is basically, we had this major incident that I talked about, and because there was one service which was taking 34 milliseconds to respond, which was basically choking every other service out, and then we kind of like worked and then fixed it so that the response time became normal, 2 milliseconds in the heavy load. And this was just a week before Christmas holidays, and that's my team. Everybody stayed. There were just 2 engineers who were actually fixing the issues. Others were talking to stakeholders, answering support requests, appraising the first level and second level support. So even though, like, everyone had plans to go to Christmas markets and so on, the team stayed together. So this is also like one of the biggest culture thing, which comes because we are following all of those practices, because we are transparent, we are constantly communicating, we are working together. So this is, I think, one of the best ways that I can see for having sustainable. So it's not what tech stack you have, what technological prophecy like you exhibit. At the end, it's about the team morale, the team culture, transparency, simplicity. All of those things is what makes you develop a sustainable product, always having the user and the business in the focus. Thank you so much. Yeah, so yeah, that's it from me. Again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm still learning how to present it virtually, so yeah, I hope I get better in time.
Thank you so much, Shamala. And Caesar has a bit of a pointy question. I'm going to read it still. He's coming back to the why. What is the overarching why after Volkswagen's Dieselgate? Is the latest review, but this is not about tech, Caesar.
So
you're also pointing to a YouTube.
The question, yes.
Yeah, so you're pointing to a YouTube video which we can't open right now because it would just derail a bit the stream. So was the question related to tech there? Shamala is in the tech department. It's not a car manufacturer part.
Yes,
and they do have some good efforts, like for example, the app for the E-Up 2020.
So, okay, first of all, so I cannot answer the question that you have about, so whatever answer you're expecting related to the Dieselgate, you have to forward this question to our communications department. But I can say that VW is super huge. So Digital Lab Berlin is not the only place where software is getting developed. We are one of the labs where software is being developed. So probably E-Up is developed by some huge some other department. So yeah, we are not responsible for it. And for catching up with Tesla, I guess Herbert Diess is really open in LinkedIn, and he is constantly posting things about like the emerging electrical vehicle market and so on. So I guess you can directly even post this question to Mr. Diess.
Yeah, and at least in the last years, I've seen some very good efforts from the Volkswagen group. For example, Moya, that has these electrical shuttles.
Yes.
Like Berlin people will know Clever Shuttle and Bergkönig, as Moya is in Hamburg. So that is super cool, with these cars built from the ground up that are fully electrical. And the company also hires drivers, which is something that Uber or Free Now don't do. And there's Heycar, because I see Jessica Schmidt here in the tennis. Hi, Jessie. They sell used cars, and mostly premium and less polluting cars. And that's also a venture where Volkswagen is partially invested. So there are some good things coming out of there, aside from the thing that happened in the past.
Yes, sure. So I think for the coming years, the main focus is on electrical vehicles. I think you all know the new ID.3 is going to be released soon, which is basically the humble version probably of Tesla. And I am hoping that that becomes a very good success in the European market.
Sweet. More questions. Shamala, I had one about your slides. You had in there that the design team sets the why and the product people set the how. Is that how you meant it?
No. So what I said. So what I meant was, normally, if you think about these roles, you can put them into those boxes, like, what the product designers or product managers, there are certain responsibilities to each of them, but at the end, it's not like, they are only doing that responsibility. The whole team has to come as a whole and have to work on the product. So that's the most important thing, as in the balanced teams.
Okay, got it. More question, people. Going once, going twice. All right, and thank you so much, Shamala. Is that a Scratch world map behind you?
Yes.
Oh, it's cool.
Thanks.
All right, and so thank you very much for your presentation and your time. Our next speaker is Artyom. Artyom wrote a book, which I see is quite well rated on Amazon. I will unmute it right now, but it may lag a bit on your end.
Hi.
Hi. How long did it take you to write the book?
Oh, it took twice more than I thought it will take, but it still took only 4.5 months.
From the moment you started to when you published on Amazon?
Exactly.
All right, and what was an unexpected downside of it? Because I'm assuming benefits is some nice passive income.
The downsides, well, actually, let me think about it. I think the downside is that I can't.
Shamala, we're still
really
seeing your screen. Just a second. I will. All right, we don't see your screen anymore. Cool. Continue, Artyom. So, sorry for speaking over you. I thought maybe she's going into some
worries. Yeah,
private
so
stuff.
I was just saying that like the downside is probably just now it's more complicated for me to explain what I'm doing. So when people are asking, so what are you doing, Artyom? So I'm like, so I'm a designer and I'm also author, but author is kind of sounds a little bit pretentious. So I don't know. It adds some complexity to how I explain myself.
Well, but that's not that bad, right?
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Could be worse. Could be worse.
And how do you deal with the mean comments?
Mean comments. I think you should do some mean comments, so I'll have some.
I don't know. I was just seeing that some you have the 1-star reviewers on Amazon and.
Oh yeah. There was
all that type
actually
of
on
feedback.
Amazon when you were actually on Amazon. If somebody comments to your book, you don't really have a way to answer. So you can basically write a comment to a review, but nobody sees it until somebody initially clicks on comment inside this review. So basically, if somebody says something that you don't agree with or you want to comment on, there is no way for other people to see your response. So basically, for example, on Trustpilot, where people leaving a lot of mean reviews to companies, so at least they have a way to respond to these reviews. So on Amazon, actually, you don't really have this kind of mechanism. You can, like, if it's something that you think is coming from a competitor or something like that, so you can report the review, and Amazon will basically review it and like consider removing it. But if people are saying you're completely wrong in your book and you want to respond to that, it's not helpful.
Okay. Cool. So thank you for that, and it's over to you if you'd like to share the slides or your screen.
Sure. Okay, so I want to talk about how digital products affect the sustainability, the environment, and how we as product designers or product managers with a relatively small effort and small changes can affect sustainability and the environment. So I'll start with a story that I kind of stole from Dr. Leila Ajarlu that she told her TED Talk. And the story is about electric kettles. So 97% of households in the UK own an electric kettle, and 65% of people who own them admit to overfill them. So it means that basically people are using boiling much more water than they're using immediately after it's boiled. And because it's happening on a national scale, such a way it requires a lot of resources to boil water, because the electric kettle has to produce heat. So basically, all of this wasted energy for the water that is not used is enough to light all the lights in the UK for a whole night. And there is another thing that people in the UK like. Maybe more, maybe less than tea, but they really like sports, watching sports. And there's this unique phenomenon that's happening in the UK that during very big football games, people, like, the first thing that is happening after the sports are going for a break, people are going to their kitchen and turning on their kettles. And because it happens in such a national scale, and because electric kettles require so much energy, it basically brings to this huge spike in the demand for electricity that destabilizes the electricity grid in the UK. And sometimes it means that the UK need to buy electricity that is produced in France by nuclear plants. And basically, this national scale wasteful way of using energy is a result of bad product design. So if I'm looking for electric kettle on Amazon, the first result will be this kettle, and there are two problems with it. First of all, it can fit 13 cups of tea, like water that is enough for 13 cups of tea, which is probably too much. Nobody needs so much probably. And the second problem is that it doesn't have any indication of how much water I have inside this electric kettle. So two of these things, they basically set me up as a customer to overfill my electric kettle. And so this is a physical, like industrial design, right? So usually product designers that are working on physical products, they are trained to be more conscious of sustainability and how their products are affecting the environment. So they are expected to understand how different materials are produced and how much energy they require, how recyclable they are, how basically to produce products that take less space and more like easier to transport and so on. So I assume that most of people who are listening, joining this meetup, working on digital products. And I think that as product managers or product designers working on digital products, we don't really think about this type of effect that our products can have on the real world, let's say. So, for example, Uber, Grubhub on Amazon, if us here in this meetup would work on any of these companies, would probably work on a digital product. But when we think about it, it actually have a lot of impact also on the physical world, and as a result, affect the environment. So Uber, they're operating 3 million rides per day, which means that they actually decide every day how 3 million rides will be processed, where they will they go in the most optimized way, or there's some way to basically minimize the impact and the emissions that every vehicle will produce. Grubhub, they deliver almost 500,000 food deliveries. So I think there is a lot of opportunities to have basically to improve their impact on from the perspective of packaging and also transportation. So as somebody who works on products, product managers, product designers, data analytics people, we're having all of these discussions in our meeting rooms, and we're trying to understand what are the advantages, disadvantages of each of our decisions. We're trying to evaluate them on different different verticals. Will it improve our engagement or improve our accessibility or decrease any of this like performance or conversion? But I think that one of the words that we're not hearing a lot, and I invite you to use it and to bring it to these meetings, is sustainability, because many of the decisions actually have impact in the real world as well. So in 2016, I created several concepts of how basically design or product concepts of how companies and products that we all are using can do relatively small changes and have a positive impact on the environment, or improve their impact on the environment. So I'll share several of these concepts, and some of them actually, since I wrote this article and I published it, they actually were implemented in this product. So we'll get to this at the end. So I'll start with the concepts that actually still relevant. So the first example is from macOS and how this product could potentially improve its effect on the environment and reduce the paper waste. So if I would like to print this article in New York Times through Safari, I would have to use this standard default dialog that macOS is using. And this article requires 4 pages to print it. And the very last page will include just a single line that includes the copyright of New York Times. So you'll probably agree that there is no reason to do that. Basically, it's super wasteful, and there's no reason to print this page. So a very easy solution that Apple could do is just automatically recognize that there is, let's say, less of the 10% of the content of the last page is a field with some content, and automatically scale down the content. So the scale percentage feature already exists. So what I would suggest is just to automatically recognize that there is very small amount of content on the last page, and automatically to reduce the scale. So it will be more critical with the things that you actually want to look exactly how you design them. So if you printing a business card or something like that, so it'll obviously you want to have like 100% scale always. But when you're printing an article, it makes sense to it would not hurt the experience of reducing the size of the content just by 2%. So the next example is from Uber Eats, from a food delivery service from Uber, and how they could decrease plastic waste and paper waste. So after I choose the food that I want to order on Uber Eats, and I go to the checkout, basically I suggest to give users an option to opt out from the cutlery. So Uber, they already know where I live. So when I order food to my home, they can safely assume that I already have cutlery at home. So I think for at least for the orders to home, they could just automatically ask restaurants not to add cutlery. There's another issue that I read that a lot of restaurants that don't really read the comments that that are added to this this type of free text comments at this type of delivery services, but it's probably a bigger problem that they would have to solve. But I think that there is a lot of potential in decreasing this type of waste through giving up on the unnecessarily cutlery. So the next example is from eBay and how they could encourage reuse of products that are sold on eBay. So eBay are a marketplace, right? So they would be happy with more demand and more supply on their platform as long as there are more things are published on eBay and sold, their business is growing. So I think that one of the things that eBay could do to improve their impact, environmental impact, is to encourage people to sell things that they just bought a replacement for. So for example, if I just bought iPhone 11 and eBay sees that I bought iPhone 6 2 years ago, so they could assume that I bought the new iPhone to replace the old one. So here, after I just finish my purchase and I receive this confirmation to my email, they could already suggest me to list my old iPhone on eBay. They already have all the description because I bought it on eBay before. So they have the category that it belongs to, the description, probably even the photos. So they could basically reuse this information with like 1 or 2 clicks, already bring it to like make it easier for me to publish it on eBay. And obviously through this behavior of encouraging people to reuse and selling secondhand things on eBay, they could have a positive impact on the environment. So people will be less likely to buy new things, and basically eBay would have more supply on their platform and provide more options for people to buy iPhone. Another example from eBay and how they could decrease CO2 emissions. So this is more, this example specifically, I think more relevant to the US because I'm not sure if I saw such a thing in Europe. But basically in the US, you manage to have this option of choosing either ground shipping or air shipping. So the ground shipping is obviously much more sustainable because it requires, it has less emissions. And since eBay they don't really have interest in, doesn't have a preference for users to choose more expensive or less expensive shipment So one of the things that they could do, they could just educate their users about effects of different types of shipping and add this type of explainer that the ground shipping will be more environmentally friendly. So the next example is from WeWork and how they could decrease CO2 emissions. So WeWork have about 500 buildings around the world, and actually buildings, they have a lot of impact on the environment, because the way they're using the resources inside the building, the electricity, the water, the heating, all of these things, they require a lot of resources. And there is the certification program that is called LEED, L-E-E-D, that gives different types of tiers of certification of sustainability to buildings. So WeWork, they already have many buildings that are certificated through this program. So basically, without changing their product or doing any new R&D for their physical product, they could encourage and promote more sustainable choices on their website. So for example, one of the things they could do, they could choose the buildings that are also have this certification and also relatively empty, that they want to kind of push from the business perspective. So they could mark them as environmentally friendly option or more environmentally friendly option and promote it to the users. So this is how it could look on the list of their buildings, and inside of the page of their building, they could also mark it as a more environmentally friendly building and provide some context, some explanation what actually eco-friendly building means. So this example also is very helpful for how they could position their brand, especially because they're focusing on millennials. So millennials are more likely to purchase from brands that are more sustainably friendly. So they could also leverage that as a marketing in a marketing way, and position themselves as a more sustainable option comparing to their competitors. So the next example is from Amazon, how they could decrease CO2 emissions. So today, if you're trying to buy, let's say, headphones on Amazon, you would probably minimize your, so you would have like almost unlimited amount of options, and you would probably minimize it to several, I don't know, like 2-3 options, and you would consider, you would try to choose one of these options. But at the end of the day, maybe you will feel good about yourself by saving $3 and looking at the choosing one option over another. But one of the things that also have a big environmental impact, but also provides much better experience to you as a customer, is the durability of the product. So if you bought an option that is $3 cheaper, but it actually worked just for 1 year, and the one that costs $13, but it will work for 3 years, you didn't really save $3. You actually lose $20, assuming you will have to buy a new pair of this option three times. So this option is actually a little bit more complicated to develop. And my previous examples, I think they were more easy to implement, and I think even like relatively junior product managers or product designers could push these ideas. This one may be a little bit more complicated, but I think it can have also a very big impact, right? Because Amazon is they're responsible for such a big amount, such a big percentage of all e-commerce purchases in the world today. And just by giving some indication of how durable the product is, they could decrease the waste that is produced. And basically, they could also promote the products that will work for will be more durable, and as a result, also provide much better experience to their buyers. So they could do it in different ways. The easy way probably would be just like to collect this information from, to ask for this type of information through the Amazon reviews. They could also send this type of email after a year or 2 years after you use this product, just asking, are you still using this product, with a simple yes or no, and then collect this type of information. So with products like more, I would say, products that require more resources, for example, washing machine, actually the durability is even more critical. So there are some calculations that I read about that basically show that more expensive washing machines, they could actually return the difference of the price comparing to the cheaper options in several months, because they're just using the resources in a such more effective way. So they're using electricity and the water much more efficiently. So I think there's also a place for Amazon or for any e-commerce player to basically calculate the cost of use during the lifespan of the product, and to give this information to customers before they buy. And this way they will be able to have a better understanding of how much this product will actually cost me. Because if you think about it, today you're only paying to acquire the product, but you don't really know how much the repair will cost, how much resources it will require, and how much electricity you will pay. So I think that those are things, also opportunity for digital products to solve. And on this slide, you can see this representation of how I see the lifespan of a product and these blind spots that we currently have. So we're buying something, we don't really know, we don't really understand what the warranty is about. So in the description, we might read, oh, it's 2 years warranty, it sounds good, but let's say you have a problem now with this product. What are you actually doing with that? Are you supposed to send it to Amazon? Are you supposed to send it to the manufacturer, or is there like a third party store that is supposed to take care of it? It's not very clear. And also, like, which type of problems with this product this warranty covers. So I think that there is opportunity in a digital product to actually kind of aggregate this type of information, and to trying to understand and make it more clear, and present it in a better way to the consumers. And it's same thing without repair, right? So if you're considering to buy a specific smartphone over another, but you're likely to have some problems with that during its lifespan. So it might be you need to replace the battery, or you would drop it and your screen is cracked now, so you have to replace it. So when you're buying the smartphone at the beginning, you don't think about this cost, but actually, if you take into consideration this cost at the very beginning, maybe it makes sense for you to buy the more expensive phone now, because it will the repair of it will be less expensive. It doesn't make much sense probably if more expensive, if the product is more expensive, probably also the repair will be more expensive, but we don't really know about it. So I think that there's also opportunity for a digital product to take into consideration this kind of cost, because those things happen. Like the screens are breaking and the batteries needs to be replaced. So it is something that will very likely to happen to the products that you're buying. And today we don't know, we don't think about these things, and we don't take them into consideration when buying this product over another product. So now I will show, I think I have three examples left. So those were actually already implemented in the products. So I shared them in 2016, and they were actually implemented. So the first example is from Kayak, a website that is aggregating flight tickets, and there is opportunity for them to decrease carbon emissions. So let's take this example of two flights from Washington DC to Minneapolis. And one of them is a direct flight, and the second option is a flight with a layover in Chicago. So the direct flight will be 23% more, require 23% less emissions. So basically, most of the fuel that is burned by airplanes is burned during the takeoffs and landings. So by having the same, and Chicago is, by the way, is kind of in the center between Washington and Minneapolis. So from the distance perspective, it's almost the same, but it will require much more fuel to burn. So it means that direct flights will be always more sustainable than flights that are not direct. And for Kayak, their business model is taking a percentage or some kind of cut from the tickets that are sold through their platform. And obviously more expensive flights are usually the direct flights. So here in this example, actually the business objective and the business interest is very aligned with the sustainability. So if Kayak would be able to sell more direct flights, they would also encourage more sustainable behavior and produce less emissions. So what I suggested is to mark the direct flights as more eco-friendly and basically also have a good impact on that. Also educate your users about the impact of their behavior and of their customer choice, but also have good effect on the bottom line of your company. And actually, who implemented it? It was not Kayak, but their competitors, Skyscanner. They implemented this feature. It's very similar to what I suggested. And they're marking the direct flights in several in specific occasions as a greener choice, and they even calculate the percentage of CO2 emissions that are saved during this through this option. So the next example is from Medium, how they could decrease the paper waste. So this specific example is just basically a bug. So Medium, for several years, if I would like to print something on Medium, their last 1 or 2 pages would be completely blank, but they would still be printed. And it's just a bug, right? But if Medium would think about where their product meets the physical world and what kind of impact it has on the environment, they would probably at least have this this behavior checked in the QA process, right? So it's a very small thing, but if they would be more mindful to this environmental impact that their company would have, they would probably check this and fix it in the very before they would ship this this product. And also, Medium is all about reading experience, right? So it makes so much sense to assume that people will print their articles that are published on Medium. So the next example is from LinkedIn and how they could decrease the CO2 emissions, materials waste, and other environmental effects. So one of the sub-products that LinkedIn have, it's jobs. Basically, it's a job board, and the most sustainable type of jobs, the remote jobs, were not there in 2016, where actually it didn't make sense even back then. So remote work is the most sustainable type of jobs because they require no commute, no office space. They encourage workers to eat more at home, which means that they would consume more healthy type of foods and produce less waste. And according to different researchers, remote jobs, they make workers feel happier and more productive. But besides just being more sustainable, they actually were missing on the business opportunity because remote jobs, they're growing and they become more popular, and there is more and more interest around it in the last several years. So this is a graph from Google Trends that's showing amount of searches for a remote job during the last 5 years. You can see that it's constantly growing. So a very easy solution that so this is how it looked in 2016, and a very easy solution that I suggested, just to basically add an option to have a free text, to be able to search by free text and just type remote in this search field. It would also require to add a sorter, like in the locations list, and also mark all the remote positions in their list. So as I said, this was actually implemented in LinkedIn. I don't know when, but probably in the last 1 or 2 years. But in 2016, when I came up with this concept, it was still not there. But I think that it only shows that actually they realized how much they're missing on this opportunity. And I think the last example is from Google Maps and how they could decrease the CO2 emissions. So in 2016, basically any place that I would like to understand that I would like to navigate to through Google Maps, they would always suggest me to go with a car. So their default would be a car. I don't have a car, I don't even have a driver license, which means that I never use this option. But every time I would like to go somewhere, they would suggest me to use a car. And I think that it also a bad user experience, but also it encourages me, or basically shows me always this default to go with a car. So assuming I would have a car, they would always encourage me to use it instead of actually considering to use public transportation or to walk or to use a bike. So the thing that I suggested back then, just to encourage use of public transportation, maybe even people who are using cars, they could see. So in this specific example, actually taking a bus takes 23 minutes, when taking a car takes 20 minutes. So I think in this specific case, for example, it would be a nice way to encourage people who are taking a car to use public transportation instead, and maybe at some point changing and changing their behavior, encouraging them to use more sustainable options. So this specific example is also from Tel Aviv, where it's a nightmare to find a parking. You might drive there 20 minutes, but it will take you 20 minutes more to find a parking. So actually, in this case, it would make much more sense to take public transportation. So what they actually implemented since 2016, they just remember the very last option that you use to navigate anywhere. So if I went with if I navigated with the bike somewhere, so next time I will open the app, they will by default just show me the navigation way to get to this point with the bike. So that was my last example, and I'll try to share some ways that you can become more conscious of the sustainability and of the effect that your digital products on the sustainability. So I think that the most impactful thing that you can do is to educate yourself about sustainability, right? So as more you will know about what actually is more sustainable and what affects the environment in a negative or positive way, you will also be able to understand in your digital product what are the features or behaviors that you are shaping through your products that are actually having good or bad impact on the environment. I also encourage you to think how your product, even if your product doesn't have a lot of users right now, I invite you to think how much, what kind of impact it would have in case that tomorrow 100,000 people or 1 million people would use it. It can also help you to understand where this type of opportunities to improve the sustainability of your products can be. Another thing you can do is to challenge, next time you're interviewing a product manager, is to ask them one of these test exercises and use some sustainability questions. So for example, if today you're asking how would you improve the retention of Pinterest, or how you increase the retention in Spotify, this type of question. So you could ask how Amazon could increase the sustainability of their product. And the last one is, of course, to challenge other products to be more sustainable, to open tickets, to talk to their support, to ask them, to ask companies and their product managers and their support representatives to basically introduce features that are having a better impact on the environment. Yeah, that's it. This is my Twitter, if you're interested in this type of things. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Artyom.
Do we have questions or not really?
Sometimes it takes a bit for people to type. So as we saw last time, let's give it a minute.
Okay, cool.
Nice mic, by the way. You really
Yeah,
set
it's very
yourself out.
fancy. I got it. Yeah, I got it last week.
And would you recommend it as a purchase?
I recommend it as a purchase, but be conscious that the mic will cost you X, but all the setup around the mic will cost you 0.5X. So the mic was 100 euro, but just this stand made of, I don't know, plastic and I don't know, like metal kind of thing, it was 50 euro. So it's kind of like every company, they're producing obviously their own adapters that fit only their mics. So you will buy only from them. And obviously they encourage you to buy only from them and they make a price very high. So,
so basically the Apple monitor model, right? Where the stand is 1K.
Exactly. Yeah, but with that, yeah, that's actually exactly what's happening.
or the overpriced dongles.
Yeah. I think with the microphones, I mean, you can, I was just like, I have this, basically, I just wanted to mic that looks good also, not just works well. That's the reason I bought this one, and I had to buy more expensive stands. But if you don't care how they look, you can actually buy something that will be also as good as this one and cheaper, and also the stand will be more also cheaper.
Cool. Are you also doing podcasts or what?
Fortunately, I'm not doing podcasts, but I'm going to record a video course that is based on my book. So I was thinking that it's a good use of my time during the non-going out kind of time during the Corona. So yeah, so that's a good opportunity to finally do that. I was thinking about it for like since I published the book, and I think now it's a good opportunity. But mostly I'm doing it because I just want to see if I manage to do that, if I like it, if I enjoy it, if it actually provides value for the readers, because I'm writing a new book and I'm considering also to, like, I'm thinking, should I do it also, like only write it as a book or make a video course or do both? So basically,
or you could do audiobook. I don't know about people, but for me, Audible has really worked on finishing through books. Before that, I had a super big pile that I would just go halfway through. And now with Audible, I just go for a walk and leave it running. And if it has some boring parts, I just mentally check out. But I managed to finish a lot more books this way. And I would definitely, I started now looking for things, even if I have them purchased in some format, I'm still more inclined to go via Audible.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I'm also using a lot of audiobooks. I think like specifically in my book, there's a lot of visuals because it's basically for product designers. So, I mean, I could do audiobook, but also send a PDF with the visuals, but then you still have to be in front of the computer if you look at the PDF. So I thought it's not necessarily like the best format for my specific book, but in general, I agree. I also use audiobooks a lot.
Hey, we also have Anil. Yeah, I know regular microphones. All right, so we have some comments. One is from Albina, who says, general comment to organizer, really nice format, would be great to keep it even when everything returns to normal. Would everything ever return to normal? We don't know. But yeah, we're also enjoying this, and at least it saved us the commute. So this is pretty great. Plus, we seem to be making very good time. Like we usually finish around 9:30 or 9. So right now we're a bit ahead of time. And second from Sasha. Hi, Sasha. The mic issue is weird. Regular microphones used for sound studios, etc., have had standardized mounting threads for ages. So they scammed you, Artyom. This is what Sasha is
Yeah,
implying.
that's the thing. They just I was impulse buyer. I was like, oh shit, it's Corona coming. I have to go home. I cannot leave my house in a couple of days. I have to buy
Did
it
you
now.
also get
so
toilet
I was panicking. Yeah, so I was like having a mic in one hand and a toilet paper in another one, walking home happy, ready for the quarantine.
And by the way, I've read Artyom book on product design. I think I can highly recommend to people who are especially the product managers and product designers. He has
Thank you very much.
He has some really good insights about like in your summary slides, challenging different way of thinking on a different products. It was a nice read.
Thank you.
Cool. We have a comment from Sylvie Sodan. Hi, Artyom. I don't have a question for you, but thank you very much for your presentation. It was very inspiring. I like that your presentation was case-oriented. I wish you a nice evening. Thanks, Sylvie. That's very nice.
Thank you very much.
So thanks, everyone. If Johan and Shamala want to be unmuted, I have just clicked the unmute button. I don't know if you also need to accept to be unmuted.
Yeah. We're here.
All right. So thank you everyone for coming, especially at these times and making time to present. This was great fun.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for all the questions and thanks for the moderation, Mirella.
Yeah,
thank you for
welcome.
organizing. Thank you for inviting.
Well, thank you for showing up. Also, most importantly. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cool, everyone.
Bye.
Wish you a nice evening. Bye.
You too. Stay healthy, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Bye.